Sarah, you've been in the PPC industry for over 15 years, board member of the Paid Search Association, and just overall PPC expert. So I wanted to get you on here and just go over just a deep dive into e-commerce. So many things are changing. Just wanted to get your expertise and advice for people that are still trying to manage e-commerce profitably when Google changes something every 2 or 3 months. So if you want to go ahead and jump in and just kind of what can people do currently with e-commerce with, Performance Max and then discoveries getting rolled into demand gen, and that's still brand new for everybody. And then you still have shopping, but it's crisscrossing with branding and search and Performance Max cannibalizing things. What's some advice on kind of how people can split things up with the new features and use them correctly, but still use some of the old tactics to make sure things are still profitable and on track for small and large accounts?
Yeah, no, those are good questions. So, again, I think you mentioned that I've been doing this for forever. So, when I say that I use old school techniques and tactics, like, please don't think that I'm doing SCAGs,
No,
keyword
not
ad
like that.
groups, and I'm segmenting, nothing like that. But at the same time, like, I do start with the bread and butter of a campaign. So if I were to start completely from scratch, which a lot of the accounts that I manage have already been built out, so we're taking an existing account. But if I were to start completely from scratch, I would start with that key product, right? The search campaigns.
Yeah.
And I would build out search first and foremost,
Okay.
because that is still, to me, the bread and butter of paid search. Is somebody is typing in something in the search bar and you want your brand to be showing up. Now, once you sort of get into those search campaigns, you get into the age-old debate is how much brand should I do versus how much non-brand should I do?
Yeah.
I am definitely a start with your brand person, because if you are an e-commerce brand and you're doing anything upper funnel, which by the way, you should be, right? You should be doing Facebook. You should be doing other upper funnel campaign types. I guess when I say campaign types, I mean Facebook, I mean CTV, I mean display, I mean things like that.
Yeah.
YouTube, I guess, with Google. So you should be using other tactics. Then I would build that brand first. And we can kind of come back and talk about how I see brand.
Yeah, definitely.
And then to scale, then non-brand, and I'm going to put that as /Performance Max. And we can talk about how I see those two interacting. And then I also, with the campaigns that I manage, I do put in a discovery campaign as well as YouTube as well, because I look at it as a whole picture versus just as these individual campaigns at this point.
Yeah, definitely. And in GA4, as messy as the rollout was, it does, how to say this professionally, it attempts to fix attribution. So it has the fractions, which are fun to explain to clients what 18.7 conversions means. But it's doing a pretty good, an okay attempt at splitting that up, because you do have a lot of different touch points now. You talked about, YouTube and search and Performance Max. They're all going to crisscross, and a lot of people don't click and buy, especially and that's not just e-commerce. I mean, that's lead generation or e-commerce for small or larger products, even fashion, just a t-shirt or something. You don't always just immediately buy it. You can save it, or people will pin it or like it or share it if you're crisscrossing into social media, things like that. So it's good to have all these different touch points, and GA4 does a little bit better about looking at all those touch points and sending that back into Google Ads. But you mentioned the brand. I guess let's go ahead and start with that. How do you break down different brands? Because of course, with e-commerce, there's going to be the exact name. It'd be ABC Company, and then there's brand and product. ABC t-shirts, ABC shoes, you know,
Yes.
so it's kind of the brand, but not really. So a lot of people say absolutely block it, even if it's ABC brand t-shirts. It's like that has the brand in it, so we don't want it. Or people say use all of them. How would you recommend splitting up brand for e-commerce?
So I will say the one sort of exception is I will have a campaign that is just what I would call a pure brand. And that is going to include that brand keyword. And that is a lot of times because if you are heavy on the brand awareness, you are going to get a lot of your volume coming through, especially during Black Friday, Cyber Monday on just literally that brand name. I do like having that campaign isolated for a budget and return on ad spend perspective. Now it could be sort of brand plus plural, brand plus category, but it's really more pure than not. And then from there, I like to have a models, right? So like a models or type. So like you said, let's just pretend I am running paid search for the Gap, which if you're listening, Gap, you can hire me. You can hire both of us because that would be a big account, right?
Yeah, it takes more than one person.
Exactly. Right. Switch your agency. We'll do it.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out. But I would do like, t-shirts. I would do, pants. I would do the different brand like that. Now, whether they become campaigns or ad groups is really going to depend there on that ROAS. So when I think about something as large, right, as Gap, I would certainly probably separate what would be ad groups into campaigns, just because there is that potential that a pants might have a different, return on ad spend than maybe a tank top or a t-shirt. So it all is very, very how you see that scale going. But, definitely having some segmentation of the models. And then also that it's sort of like a brand intent, right? So comparing. So, I know Gap and Old Navy are owned together, but let's say, I don't know, I love clothes, right? And it's funny, I have no clothes clients.
I think J. Crew, they don't own them. And that's, I guess that's a competitor.
Okay. There we go. That's a perfect example. So Gap versus J. Crew. That intent is going to be different, but you're still having someone that's brand aware.
Yeah.
And so I would classify those as a brand campaign, but a brand comparison. And again, anytime there is that switch in that return and that intent is a great time to break that campaign down further. And then if you have different products that don't align. So many times you will have brands, especially in e-commerce, that are all in one category, but sometimes they will have other categories. So I think of something like Anthropologie, right? It is a clothing company. It has a lot of clothing, but they also have the housewares portion.
Yeah.
And things that they're not as known for, and those need to be separate campaigns. Now, again, breadth and scope here. There are times when those business goals would make me set up a different account. So again, you can always go up different levels and down certain levels if you know how sort of the crux of the Google Ads system works.
Yeah, and that example, I mean, that's for a huge campaign, but for smaller clients, you can still run into, we have some clients that aren't the Gap, full disclosure, or J. Crew. Probably couldn't say it even if they were our clients.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, contracts and whatnot. But they did their brand kind of old school SEO. The brand isn't a brand name. It would be... I can't say their name. I have to think of kind of an example. Let's just stick with clothes, t-shirts. Funny 80s t-shirts, LLC. It's like, well, you're not a brand. Somebody's going to Google that. And it's like, well, we don't want to show for the brand. It's like if they're Googling funny 80s t-shirts or 90s sitcoms t-shirts and you threw LLC at the end of it or .com, it's like... your brand isn't a brand name, so you can't really. We do have clients like that. Their name is pretty much a search term. It's something to go. It's something online. It's high quality blank, and it's like that. You can't really separate that brand. So that one is just going to crisscross anyway, and actually, on that note too, their branded campaigns actually need a lot of optimization, whereas typically a branded one, it doesn't crisscross. But when they have a very generic name, if you want true brand, you're going to have to do exact match, which because of close variance isn't even exact. Ironically, you have to do negatives for exact match keywords now, especially with those brands that are a very generic name. You have to, I mean, you should monitor all your campaigns, but that one's is surprisingly, the branded campaign still takes a lot of work. It will crisscross into things that don't quite make sense because of their generic brand name.
Yeah, and you and I talked about how I also came from the background of the auto dealerships, right? So that is a lot of times you will have the town name, right? So the town name and then, Honda afterwards. So it might be, I don't know, I'm in Ohio, so Dublin, Honda. And so you are getting a lot of just cross-contamination in there. And it feels like a giant game of whack-a-mole. But I am, and my management style with clients in general, especially when they are dealing in absolutes, like I do not want to show for my brand name. I am the type of person who I have that conversation and I explain to them, okay, so let's talk about why you don't want to show for your brand name. Okay, I understand that. And then here is the situation that that's going to cause, where I am going to constantly be essentially trying to eliminate that. Now, if it comes through, here's what we're going to do about it.
Yeah.
And let's have that conversation. I am not going to be the best account manager when somebody has absolute rules, because we just don't deal in that type of way with our environment that Google has provided us right now.
Yeah, not anymore. There's been multiple close variants, and no one's really sure what's going on in the background, because you will show, you could do an exact match that it shows like a broad match. The settings are insane in Google. Sometimes just when they feel like it, they'll show you for anything you want. And it's like, look, it's not 10 or 15 years ago where you load it up, I want to show for these 30 exact keywords, and it might do plural, if that. Now it's like, no, we can bid on your brand and it's going to show for competitors and other things and this and that. What I was going to say though, on when they don't want to show for their brand, it's a little more advanced tactic. You would still have brand, but you'd have a handful of keywords that are negative keywords the client wants to avoid. So you do phone number, customer service, login, account with the brand. If they're looking for, the dealership phone number, that's most likely already a client or customer support or login. They
or
just
service.
Like I need to call them. What's their number again? Let me just Google it. Like we have that for our own brand, the phone number and the login and all that. It's like you're clearly you use Google as an answer thing, and you don't realize the first couple of things are ads. Please don't click on them to log into your account every single time, or find the phone number. So that would be a balance between the two. Like let's do really strict negatives on the branded campaign to avoid a current customer that just forgot your phone number, which everybody agrees is a waste of ad spend.
Yeah, we used to call that, and again, I think going back to the fact that I started doing this in 2007, we would call that as using search as a navigation, essentially. So instead of going and typing in www. Where I need to log in to pay my bill, I am going to Google and typing in and then clicking on that paid ad. And what's interesting, and this again goes back to just my experience managing very, very large clients. So we were running a survey on those landing pages where we literally, this was in the insurance insurance sector, very high CPCs. So we had a landing page that was like, get a quote right now. We were optimizing towards get an insurance quote. And what we noticed is the customer satisfaction surveys were just dropping on those landing pages. And what it was they could not find that login button, and they were using search as navigation. And so it's interesting. You would have like a high bounce rate, and you had to always play that game of keeping your current customers happy, while balancing your campaign goals.
Yeah, people, regular people, not PPC people, they use Google. I see people will type in a full URL or something.com. It's like, that goes up here, not down there. It will just go to the website and they see it's like, oh, youtube.com, official page. There's YouTube. It's like, or you could just type youtube.com or facebook.com and it's like Facebook, log in here. It's like you Google searched a .com, just go to it. I don't know. A lot of people do that.
Now, the solution for that, and again, it's insurance, education, certain sectors where that happens is, have you run like just an RLSA campaign on that? So do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah, do an RLSA, which if people don't know, that's remarketing list for search ads. That's just search remarketing.
Yes.
I'm assuming you're going to say block that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Exclude. Yeah. So it is technically a remarketing leads for search campaign, but you're using an exclusionary versus an inclusionary.
Yeah, you can do the reverse of that. If you have a lot of repeat business, or we do that, it's that thing that nobody can prove, the kind of click fraud. And there's click fraud software. I think they really inflate the numbers and say, 99% of clicks are fraudulent by our software. It's like, that's not that high. But competitors clicking on your ads, that could be, if they have that suspicion, my local competitor, the other plumber in town, I know he's clicking on my ads all day.
Oh my gosh.
When they get that, you could drop in an RLSA for something like, you don't get repeat customers. If your competitor is a very odd person that starts their day with clicking on everybody else's ads, an RLSA would block that because it's the same person. If they've been to the site before, stop showing them the ad. So that, blocking that is a advanced tactic that could help with current customers, competitors clicking on your ads, or other odd things, or people that just shop too long and they click on your ad 50 times. It's like, just either you're going to buy it or you're not. So you don't want that repeat visitor.
Yep. And I've used those, while we're talking about sort of the crux, which is a search campaign, which is where I would, obviously start looking at my campaigns since it's the flagship product. But I'd use that tactic on non-brand too. So non-brand meaning, a category. So like when we talk like somebody just typing in t-shirt into Google, right? Something pretty generic. I've used the remarketing on that just to manage how vastly quick a non-brand campaign could scale with, frankly, unqualified traffic.
Yeah.
You don't know when somebody types in t-shirt, you have no intent there, even though we used to in the old days feel like we had a lot of intent.
Yeah, and that's maybe not really very advanced. I guess just not basic. Doing exact match negatives. Just t-shirt. That wouldn't work to throw it in there because you're going to block all t-shirts. But exact match, just t-shirt. Or with home service, it's sometimes if it's just plumber or something like that, one word doesn't always work. Again, you'll have to look at the data and see what works. Typically, the near me works a lot better. That's high intent. Plumbing company near me. They're going to hire one. Plumber, sometimes that can crisscross into they're looking for the job or they need supplies. Just a one-word search.
You're right.
Oftentimes is very low intent, or it's just a very strange search. So an exact match for a one, possibly two keyword search, whereas typically when it's longer and more specific, that's going to have a higher chance of converting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think you and I talked about too symptom-based things, so like what broke, right?
Yeah.
Like pipe exploded, plumber, emergency plumber, things like that. Are definitely basement flooded plumbing, types of things like that.
It's the symptom. And we have another
symptom.
Yeah, the video with that. It's either I'll link to that video. It has the different ways people search, and this actually originally came from Brad Geddes. He's been in it for like 20 years, and that huge book, the Google AdWords Guide or whatever. And yes, it was called AdWords. I didn't say that incorrectly.
Yes, you could say
that
it in that
giant
time.
book on Amazon. That thing. And maybe he got it from somewhere else, but I'll give him credit. That's why I originally learned it like 15 years ago. People will search. They'll search for exactly what it is. Let's it's more common with attorneys that might come up. It's like personal injury attorney. That's exactly what it is. That's the technical term. And then there's what they think it is, and it's kind of they'll do slip and fall attorney. That's not what they're called, but that would fall under the category of personal injury. And then there's the symptom, which it sometimes, or like water leaking plumber. That's not what they're called, but that's a symptom with the thing. But going back to attorneys, it could be, what are slip and fall laws in Texas? It's like, why would you Google that unless you're a student, or or wrongful termination? That's an employment attorney. And if you're looking up the laws, you didn't say attorney, but you probably need one, or wrongful termination attorney, or if you know it, you say employment law attorney. So there's 3 different ways, kind of exactly what it is, kind of what it is, and then a symptom, which is if you're Googling that, you probably need a specific professional or service or software, even though you didn't exactly type it. So that's that. For people that don't know that, that's what that means by symptom search. And that's usually a larger budget. Start, like you said, start with the most specific and then build out from there.
Yes. And it's funny, whenever we say symptom, I think I had an emergency room client at one time.
Oh, those are fun.
And very, very, I would do, should I go to the ER if, there was like a lot of stuff like that versus just bidding on, and it was a small town ER. And then just really making that, a soft, because if you're typing, should I go to the ER? Like, you probably should.
Yes.
If you're questioning it, and just making that ad copy really resonate with that, not being like, yes, hurry up, get in here. Very, very conversion focused, but being, that helpful resource and guide there as well. So you really have to adjust based on what you know about people. And I am not, beneath DSA campaigns. Now I know there's been some talk in the industry about, and I guess for people who don't know what it is, dynamic ad groups. So basically you put an ad in that allows Google to crawl the website and generate those keywords for you versus me coming up with them. And I use those a lot of times to catch low-hanging fruit that I wouldn't even think about. But I also find it gets around that aspect where Google will tell you that there's not enough volume in the long tail as well. So I use a combination of those. But then, it also helps me mine and find those keywords and come back to the client and say, what did they mean when they typed this? Because sometimes it does actually mean something to that client.
Yeah, and that can pair well. Well, hopefully they don't get rid of it, because it still works. It can pair well with automation. Again, this is a larger budget thing, but even home services, attorneys, software, you can find clicks for 20 cents, and it'll be this, it's a sentence. It's a very, very long thing, but it converted. It's like you wouldn't have been able to find a 20-cent CPA on your own. You have to cast that extremely wide net of dynamic, which you have to watch that extremely closely. Do your negatives. That is that's check it once or twice a day, and an expert needs to run that. You can't just you heard it here and you drop it in your account tomorrow. It's like it could spend $2,000 without anything. It's very advanced. You have to watch it. You need good SEO, because it's crawling the site pretty much the same. So if your SEO is awful and the page is awful, it's not going to match the correct terms. But if all that's lined up, you can find some hidden gems in there, some long tail keywords. And we see it all the time. You get clicks for 20 cents. You could take that and make it phrase or broad, and it will not be 20 cents. The exact same thing. And automation works well. It typically gets hundreds and hundreds of clicks, so CPA will be lower, ROAS will be higher. It will fix some things. So we still use DSA, or constantly changing inventory, which can be auto dealerships, if they want to do their feed. But that works well for them, especially used anything. When you have 10,000 things that swap out a lot, DSA can be a good one for that.
Right.
So
100%.
So that's a good option too, but it's extremely advanced, almost like broad match with auto bidding. It's like that's actually advanced. That's not simple, and you have to watch it very closely, and you have to be trained how to run that.
Right.
But we're jumping around a little bit. You had your original breakdown. You
Yep.
said
So,
search was one, and
yep,
then kind of break down how search is obvious. It's got the keywords and it's the brand.
correct.
How do you put just standard shopping, which is a product feed that's going to come in, and then you also said discovery, which they're changing, but it's going to be very similar, and then performance max. I think that's what confuses a lot of people. How is all
Yeah.
that distributed? How's the rest of it all work?
Yeah, yeah. So I've not used standard shopping in ages.
Oh wow.
No, I believe Google prioritizes its sort of products. But again, I think that that's something that, people in the paid search industry, and I sometimes explain this to people, is we can have different methods for doing things and still both get pretty similar results. But then there's other times when it's not working, and then us experts sort of talk to other experts and then are like, oh, maybe I should pull back and try this.
Well, social
But
media kind of says this is the one way to do it.
it is
Depending on
not,
whose post you're reading, it's like this only do
this
this.
is the one way, right?
Yeah, this is the
Right.
one way. It's like, well, you don't
Right.
know what you're talking about. There's 100 different
Exactly.
ways.
Exactly. And there's some things that I think that I'm like, I don't want to say that out loud, but I think that, so it's
That's
just,
what LinkedIn is for now. It's
yeah,
the
that's what LinkedIn being
professional
absolute, right?
professional
It's an,
rant. When you don't want to go on Facebook, it's like I'll rant on LinkedIn.
exactly, exactly. Well, what's funny is, and I guess I'll get off topic before I get back on topic, is I saw something, and I believe it was by another paid search industry expert, and they posted just a video talking about how the experts in the room are not going to deal in absolutes. And a
No.
lot of times clients are looking for an absolute answer. And they hire the person with the absolute answer, like, I will get you 5x return. I will get
Yeah.
you, and that is the opposite of the person you should be hiring. The person you should be hiring, it's going to sound a little bit like, I don't know if this is the way, this might be the way,
Yeah.
because they have seen it and they've seen it all. And we could get into that when I because I do want to go into PMAX and then talk about sort of how I manage, during Black Friday, Cyber Monday. And we can sort of have a good conversation there. But once I've built search, and again, talking ecom, I then immediately go to that Performance Max campaign next.
Okay.
And I go there because of a couple main reasons. One, it is the only way that I have found to scale up campaigns. And by scale, I mean grow more business. And two, you have to have the product feed component. You have to be showing in that top ads, because those are really those visual key product. It's a necessary part of your campaigns. So I go there next. Now, you'll notice that I did not mention that I go to non-brand next. And I do not go to non-brand next because Performance Max has a non-brand component.
Yes.
And I believe that the non-brand in Performance Max is slightly more controlled versus the paid search component, or I'm sorry, the search component that I can build out. And again, we can sort of talk about my experience of what I've seen there. So when I build Performance Max and I mentioned the feed, I have noticed that it, is very, very feed heavy. And again,
Yeah.
e-commerce. Very, very feed heavy. And also, we've all talked about it, but heavy on that retargeting. So if you're doing Facebook or you're doing any type of TV or CTV or programmatic display, so anything that is considered building that brand and building that desire, Performance Max does tend to capture that with that product feed, and then retargeting those people that are hitting the site out of curiosity and not being ready to buy yet.
Yeah.
So in terms of the non-brand, I feel like it goes after non-brand in a more conservative way if it has that extra budget in there, but it primarily goes after that brand with the visual component and retargeting the traffic that's already there. So I know I was really, really long-winded
No,
there,
that's good.
but that's just been my experience. And then in terms of YouTube and discovery, those last two campaigns that probably don't get talked about as much with small business, I would say medium and large.
Yeah.
I look at that as sort of what I would call like a brick and mortar perspective. And I cannot believe that I'm telling you that the brick and mortar concept came from a Google rep, but there are some Google reps out there that
They work at Google, not Teleperformance, the
correct. They work at Google,
subcontracted call
not
center that harasses
Teleperformance.
people. There's people that work at Google,
Yeah,
and they're actually
right.
pretty smart and helpful.
Correct.
They're not the call center
Correct.
telling you to spend more money. Yeah, there's two
Exactly,
different Google reps.
exactly.
Look at the signature. They legally have to say Teleperformance. If it doesn't have that, it just says
Yes.
Google.
Yes.
Then
Yes.
yeah, you can actually talk to them.
Or tech, like they're contracted out, you know, and different reps have different tiers. So this would be a, you know, a hands-on, and I think that actual term is account strategist. So they
Yeah.
do try to get you to spend more, but they're actually in your account. So they're hopeful, but they'll tell you to spend more. But
Yeah.
the analogy I was given is you look at sort of the bricks, right? So what you need, search, and then the data feed component. And then you look at anything else beyond that as sort of that mortar filling in the gaps that those campaigns don't have. So I do build out a always on discovery campaign to get any of the gaps, because again, I just said Performance Max goes heavy on that feed, and then it leans into those softer areas because it wants to spend your whole budget.
Yeah.
So I do build a discovery that I can control, soon to be demand gen. And then I do YouTube. And again, this is going to depend on that client goal. I look at YouTube regardless of the type of YouTube campaign that I'm building, because people don't understand YouTube has different intent there within YouTube. I look at it as still awareness. Now, we do have sort of tiers within that awareness, because certain YouTube campaigns do actually convert,
Yeah.
like a video for action, but I still present it to the client as this is still an awareness tactic. You could just get a little bit more incremental conversion using that YouTube.
Yeah,
and that folds
convert
into
well.
their funnel. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
It's not just really bad get rich quick courses, which seems to be all I see.
Same. I think maybe I'm just vibing.
The algorithm, yeah, it's like, hey, you're a business person, get rich quick. Here's another course. But no, so some of the other ones, it can be a good first touch point, which a lot of times it's what it is. But even with e-commerce, it can be the video and then go to a conversion. So they're not just branding and exposure.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, with our clients, a lot of times we'll do that with display also, which not necessarily discovery, or it's demand gen now, but or about to be. Their rollouts are weird.
Yeah.
But, just doing that, not search, kind of a first touch point. You get branding, like we have one, you know, it's can't get that specific. It's aftermarket car parts, and there's a lot of different brands, and it's expensive, and people, you know, fix up their cars and all this customization stuff, and there's different brands out there. So when they search what they're looking for, the brand is also important. So having a small percentage highly targeted to people that are all about fixing up their car and all these aftermarket parts and everything, to just have a little bit of touch points, which YouTube, it's pretty easy to put it in front of the right videos. And then with banner ads, with display also, I mean, you could do hand-picked placements, you can do a custom audience, you can do in market, I mean, or even just affinity can work depending on what it is. Just people, you know, I know you're interested in this, here's the brand, and it's just kind of a wide set of all their products. And then when they go search, and this is true with any brand, they recognize that search result or shopping thing. It's like, oh yeah, I know them. And that brand lift, you'll see all these other things. Maybe they don't have the best return on ad spend, but then your search suddenly goes much, much higher. And it's like, it is because of the YouTube or the discovery or the display.
Yeah, and that's why, and it used to be easier before PMAX sort of came in and started taking some of my brand traffic, but that is why I started this conversation saying that I do like to start with brand, because I use brand as sort of a barometer of if my upper funnel tactics are working. So because a lot of, again, going back to these larger clients, they're maxing out their spend on their brand campaigns, and I will be budget, like, I can't spend more, right?
Yeah.
I have 98% impression share. I've gotten the brand to where it's going to be. Then what next, right? How do I scale up and start really taking over some of that category? So, and again, it's so much harder to do now because Performance Max is taking some of that brand, so I can't see it.
Yeah.
But I can feel it. I can look at the metrics a little.
Yeah, like the return on ad spend for branded should be extremely high. Like we have one, I think they're 13x, and it should be a very high number like that. So when I mean, it depends on the brand, and if other people are bidding on it, that's not an absolute. You shouldn't always get 10x or higher on branded, but it shouldn't be 2 or 3 on brand most of the time. You're gonna have, it's usually a much higher number. Most of the time. Again, there's so many exceptions, but that the brand lift, people will come back and just convert. A lot of times that could be the last touch point.
Right, exactly.
It's like, I want, ABC product, ABC software. I've seen it. I'm just going to Google it and go straight to their site and buy it. So that's usually why that's a higher number. But like you said, a lot of times that volume won't go that high. It's like, yeah, it's 10x, but there's barely any volume on it because you didn't have everything else. And we'd love to have 10x all day, but you have to lift up the brand and spend that money somewhere else on YouTube and all these other things.
Yeah. And I mean, that's exactly why Google is going and trying with demand gen, right?
Yeah.
They want a share because we say on YouTube, and we also mean you have to go to Facebook, which is going to create, and other forms of, I mentioned CTV programmatic because I actually have not run display in a bit here with Google. I think coming from the large agency, it does go more, they have the volume to do like a trade desk or something like that.
Yeah, it makes sense. And for those enterprise level clients with a very large budget, you usually don't get really granular in Google display. They'll go programmatic. Yeah, that's a smaller budget. You don't need to hand-pick placements. That's
exactly.
More. I mean, that could we're talking 10K a month or 30K a month or something like that. Once you get into hundred thousands and millions, you don't really need to pick placements of where your target market is hanging out on some forum or some blog or hand-picked YouTube channels or something like that. That's more a much smaller budget and getting more bang for your buck kind of thing. But no, bigger companies will just use programmatic.
But I do find that having that background, and I think I have managed accounts that are 500 a month. Yeah. I have managed accounts, that are 700,000-800,000 a month. Mm-hmm. I've crossed every single probably vertical as well as spend amount in my career, and it all helps, right? So having that small hands-on approach in a big account helps. Having that big account helps with the small accounts and contextualizing that for because I have had small business owners come on and say like, oh, well, we didn't want to lose our standing with Google because, we were spending 10,000 and now we need to spend 5,000.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, Google doesn't even know who you are.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry.
It's not a lot of money.
And just, yeah. And so it's, just being able to have that conversation with them. And that's always been my approach to account management as well. Like it is always a conversation, not a this or that. And I like to partner a lot with my clients and just make sure that they learn and understand with me.
Yeah, definitely. And I think sometimes a small account can be more challenging. It's like, okay, you can manage 100,000 a month. Have you ever managed 1,000 per month effectively? Because automation doesn't really work well with the teeny tiny budgets. And you can't just say, let's try a bunch of broad match. Let's throw in some YouTube, do Performance Max. You can't do 500 a day Performance Max. So like, let's let that run for a month and see what we get. Which a bigger account, it's like, yeah, sure, let's test a bunch of things and see what we get. But 1,000 a month, it's like only your best ideas. Everything has to be perfect from the setup. You don't really get a test, because if you spend 1,000 with nothing, I mean, you're fired. With the tiny account.
Yeah, no, I definitely been there, done that. And it's interesting. I had a brand new account manager come on, someone brand new to PPC, right? And which, I mean, you and I have talked about this. It's a little horrifying when these new hires who learned and come on and think they can do it. And she went into a small account and took the budget and increased it by a ton because it wasn't getting any traffic. It was very low budget, very small radius. And I was like, oh my gosh, it actually worked. And then you have to immediately pull that back.
Yeah.
Right? And get that. And I'm thinking, like, I know why that worked. That shouldn't have worked, but that worked.
Yeah. And you know, when we train lower level people, because, you know, we have training and things and different reps or people that are newer. One thing is we tell people you have to make the decision faster. You know, the basic training, it's like, okay, you know, this ad got 500 clicks. It's like, you don't have 500, you have 20 or 30. If it's a teeny tiny budget like that, you need to make your decision a lot faster. You don't make quarterly updates. Well, that's even 5,000 a month or 10,000 a month, something that, you know, agencies or individual consultants, you get more of those, or you know, 15,000 a month, something like that. You don't do this, you know, every 90 days I'm going to look at your ads. It's like, no, that's too long, you know. Or a really small account, you can see red flags very quickly in the search terms. You can see, okay, wow, $300 was wasted on this term that makes no sense. And even if you're 2K a month, 3,000 is a substantial amount of that. Adjust with percentages. So if that was 100K a month, you just wasted $30,000 on the wrong term. Same thing. Or I don't know if that math was correct, but it's not. But the point is, adjust to your percentages and time frames depending on the budget. That's critical. Not everyone has $1 million a month, and you can't waste 100,000. So that's critical.
Yeah, no, that's very, very accurate. I think the number we used to always use is 100 clicks or more with no conversions. You know, pause that keyword, and you're absolutely right. You have to look at 20 clicks and no conversions, and just continue to pull that back, and then play with that time frame, right? So like further out, closer, you know, to kind of get the numbers that you want to make that decision on whether you're going to pause or not pause, or negative, or, you know, downgrade match type. Which kind of is a nice transition into what I was going to say about Black Friday, Cyber Monday.
Oh yeah, let's circle back to that.
I mean, I guess it's kind of, I would sort of pose this as like a question back to you, and we could kind of talk about it. But so when I am managing a campaign during this time, I am in the platform all weekend, refreshing, looking at my date range, pulling my date range back, looking at what's coming in, what's coming out. And I remember after one experience, you know, after I was sort of coming down from just looking at ads all day, every day, I was talking to a coworker, and the coworker was like, do you ever wonder, like, if you didn't do that, what would happen? Because I was changing ROAS, you know, throughout the day.
Oh, wow. How
much do you think that we can control versus what we think we control? Like, would that have happened anyway?
Yeah. Is that the question to me now?
That's sort of the question to you. Like that is always what and kind of to myself. I've always wondered, like,
I for a long time, I did not like automation, and I would argue it wasn't good 5 years ago. I did a lot of manual. I didn't do the SCAGs thing, which is single keyword ad groups. If you still see that hack floating around, that person has no idea what they're talking about, and they probably call it Google AdWords, which the name changed, by the way. For new people, it's called Google Ads as of years ago. It's gotten significantly better over the last few years. So I'm not anti-automation at all. It depends. Sometimes you manually take the wheel. We have switched to manual CPC or launch with manual CPC and more competitive things where it will do a $200 click, and I argue that's stupid and that's broken. So you kind of control it. There is some control. What I have noticed, and this is going back to, you know, there are no absolutes in PPC. If it's working, don't touch it. I've seen things that don't make any sense. Like we'll launch a campaign, maybe it's new on e-commerce, we'll put it on 200% ROAS or even 100% ROAS. Let's not do too aggressive in the beginning, give it some wiggle room. And the example was, it was 200%, and it was getting I think about 500%, and it was set to 2. Or we've had that happen with target CPA. We do, you know, it's a B2B $75 CPA. Let's not be too aggressive. And it's getting 20 all day long, $20 CPAs. And we've found that when you go in and say, great, set it to 20, set it to 15, set it to 10 if it's hitting that. And for some reason, this isn't an absolute, but when we change it to adjust, it won't hit the number anymore. Like the target CPA of 75 was getting 20. Don't touch it. It's getting 20. Whatever you set, the automation and all that AI stuff in the background, it's just working. Leave it alone. And then the ROAS, when it was 200, we set it to 5 or 6 or something like that, and then it wasn't getting 5. It was at 200 and it was getting 5. So it's like, in that case, leave it. But you said you manipulated a lot. It's kind of one of those things, or if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of thing. Don't just change settings to change it. Or for new people, like fresh out, you know, every 30 days, adjust your ROAS or some template you got on your first day. Don't do things just to do them. Or we have ads that have been in there for 6 months and everyone's like, oh, you know, A/B test, A/B test. It's like, that's kind of a beginner thing. If it works, some clients still have, you know, like a search ad that has been identical for 6 months because nothing ever beats it. So we leave it in there. Or some of those we do one ad, you know, it's always 2. It's like, well, that's kind of beginner stuff, you know. So don't adjust just to adjust. And I think we have some control, but the automation has a lot of control too. So whatever the setting was, if it's getting good results, even though, you know, you did target 200% and it's hitting 500%, it's like, well, then that's fine. I'm going to leave that setting at 200 because if I change it, it might switch and not hit its 500. Ironically, we've seen strange things like that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because my switching like that is usually in the middle. I'm going to call it in the middle of the storm, right when the traffic is already there. It's ripe. It's holiday. The intent is there, you know, and I am playing with those, you know, alongside of talking to the media planner 15 times a day because it's Black Friday e-com. So
Black Friday, Cyber Monday is a whole different set of rules. So I wasn't referencing that. So that's a whole. We could do an entire hour video and barely scratch the surface on how to run Black Friday, Cyber Monday. So that one I could see manipulated during the day multiple times because it's an unreal amount of traffic, and unreal amount of traffic is the way to put it. You were holding back a tidal wave of traffic during that time, and I mean, and I think that's where I question, you know, the weekend after, you know, because you've worked that whole time, is had I not been there making those changes, would that traffic have just come anyway? You know, or I don't know, probably. Well, I mean, if it got results, keep doing that.
There you go.
Just so
don't change your tactic, right?
Yeah, if that's how you do Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and it worked, then yes.
It worked, yes, a couple times, you know.
Then we recommend people do that for Black Friday, Cyber Monday. If you're saying I'm not working during that time, I'm just going to glance at it. Wouldn't recommend that. If you're the unfortunate person that had a client that's running a Black Friday, Cyber Monday, don't check it on Tuesday. It's like, I'm sorry, you gotta take a break from your family and go check your laptop, you know. You could have so many scripts and rules and automations. It's like, I set it all up, it's good, and Tuesday something will break if you didn't look at it. Something didn't launch, or something spent triple what it was supposed to spend, or it like you said, switching a setting in the middle of it on Friday or on Saturday or however your setup is. Can fix it, and it was a really easy fix, and don't take that weekend off.
I mean, so what happened to me during a sale, and again, it was, you know, just sort of a mid-sale thing. So the client had pushed a banner that said sale coming soon, and it was in the alt text of the banner, and that was picked up by the Performance Max campaign, and I knew it was Performance Max because of the length of that headline. And it said sale coming soon, but the sale had already started. And so we had the developer take it down, didn't go away. I mean, it continued. And what we did is we turned off that dynamic piece of the Performance Max campaigns, and it went away.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, it was not a fun experience, but that would be a classic example for do not log off and come back on Tuesday, because people are not going to be super happy.
Yeah, that's one of those, consultant, agency, in-house, whatever it is. Unfortunately, you
Yes.
have to watch it. So just plan
Yeah.
accordingly. Maybe ask your boss, because I had to work during a holiday, can I take the next week off or
Right.
something? It's like,
Right.
I was here during Thanksgiving weekend. Let me go take a break,
Yeah.
please.
Exactly.
Or
Exactly.
if you're not in that country, great. It's an American holiday, so you
Right.
don't even have to worry about that at all.
Exactly.
But yeah, I think any other things you'd recommend for while we're on Black Friday, Cyber Monday, just kind of dig into that.
Well, I always recommend the data exclusion piece because I think that's something that people forget, that's in the platform. And I always say at the point of Black Friday, Cyber Monday, or, a big sale for clients, more than the algorithm knows at that point. And I could probably visualize it in my head, but it's, under the tools and settings, you would put in a data exclusion and then tell the platform that you expect conversion rates to go up by X amount. And that way your algorithm, is responsive. Now, again, it's one of those things. If I put that in, does it work? Does it not work? I don't know because I've never not put it in. But it's just something because I always say going up into a sale, you want to go up so your ads scale quickly. Because I have had situations where the client's like 10,000, 20, 30, here's more money
Yeah.
that's coming in. And I haven't been able to spend that money. And a lot of clients, small or big, you use it or you lose the budget. That was very common with auto dealers as well. They were
Yeah.
given a portion. So you do have to spend budget you're given. But then kind of secondarily behind that coming down off of a sale can be a dangerous time as well.
Hmm.
Because again, and I'm talking about you've pushed so much media into the world, right? And hopefully not just in Google, upper funnel as well. And that people are still coming into your campaigns and so traffic's still high, but they're hitting the site and not necessarily converting at that point. So you want to be very, very careful, both going into a sale and coming down off of the sale as far as those automated algorithms are going.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point. We do that with remarketing too. It's typically a URL, and we'll make that a different remarketing group because you get bombarded with traffic. And then a lot of people do a 30-day remarketing. It's just generic, and it's like that's going to break that. You got a rush
Right.
of sale people. So
Yes.
if you want to keep retargeting it, you put them in a separate group and say, hey, did you miss the deal? Here's 20% off, or come back, or extend it, something like that. It needs a specific Black Friday, Cyber Monday remarketing because that's exactly why they were there,
Right.
which is usually done with the URL. It's real simple. Or the other way around, block that from if you
Right.
just have a standard 30-day default. The Black Friday, Cyber Monday people, you don't want to remarket them with a generic thing. You would just block them
Right.
through that URL. So yeah, we found people forget, it will really break your remarketing. It's like, why is that done terrible last month? It's like because it got flooded
Yes.
in
Yeah.
November, so your December remarketing is going to look really weird. Actually, it's gonna you have the holidays in December too, so January is going to be weird. Or any type of promo when you do a rush like that, usually do it as a different URL and then block it or make it a different audience. So
Yeah.
there's just a lot of things to think about when you do Black Friday, Cyber Monday, or December if you do things during the holidays or New Year's. Any type of promo like that it's going to be kind of its own bucket. So you have to think about that long term when it, like you said, when it is turned off.
Right. Exactly.
So okay, well, great. I think we got a ton of great content here. So yeah, I went over Black Friday. I mean, how to do arguably the new shopping build out inside your campaign, which a lot of people disagree. I mean, you're all in on Performance Max and then search and
I am.
splitting it up a lot, which I mean that was a great explanation of why. Not just because it's
Yeah.
new and Google says so, but I like the breakdown of that rather than the other one with kind of shopping and Performance Max fighting each other. But again, if it
Right.
works, do it. It's not an absolute, but I liked your expert breakdown of like, here's how I run shopping, and you run it for very large accounts and have that proven expertise over a decade. So I really like that. And the Black Friday, Cyber Monday, just a bonus, because those are extremely complicated to run and keep profitable. So yeah, great content. Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime.
How can people, get a hold of you and reach out to you?
So Twitter, if people are on Twitter, LinkedIn.
Okay.
And then I have my website, which is thesarahstemen.com.
Oh, there you go.
Versus sarahstemen.com. But if they find that one's just my personal sort of blog that I talk about freelancing in general.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I'll put links down below in the bottom. And then, just thank you so much. This was great content.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime you need anything, I'm around, or just, message me on LinkedIn or anything. So.
All right, sounds good. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye. Have a good one.
You too. Alright everyone, thanks so much for watching our PPC ads training video. If you want more videos, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Like this video if you found it useful, and any questions, post them in the comments down below. We also have additional training in the description. So thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.